Tēnā koutou katoa, he mihi nui, he mihi mahana, kia koutou katoa. Welcome this evening. Thanks for joining Emma Mortimer and myself. I'm Jude McLaren and I'm from the Film Commission, but don't hold that against me. And we are bringing you some insights, hopefully, to Fresh Shorts this evening. And we're really interested in your questions. We've got between us, we're just going to share a little bit about our background so you understand where we've come from and what we've got to share, but we'd far rather hear what your questions are. So I know that it can feel a bit stink to be, it feels a bit vulnerable to share a question. We're a little bit nervous. This is probably the thing that Emma would rather not do. But we're really here for you and we want to support you. And so please do, we've had a few questions prior to which we're going to answer first up, but we'd love to hear your questions. So Emma, if I can throw to you and you tell us a little bit about your background and then I'll share my background.
Kia ora koutou. Yes, I am Emma Mortimer, the Fresh Shorts Program Manager. This is my third time around in this role and I love it. It's such an honour and a privilege to be here on this side of the table as a producer of many short films, a couple of fresh shorts, most recently a Sunday Stories and a pilot episode for the episode 1 development program. So I have been where you are many times and yes, it's just really cool to be here to support all of you in this instance. So honestly, throw your questions at us here, but I'm always at the end of an email or a phone call anytime. Reach out, no question too big or too small. I've asked them all before myself, I'm sure.
So can you talk to us, you've worked with a number of different directors and writers, different styles, different genres. Is there anything that stands out to you in terms of kind of your experience of working towards an application with your team?
Yes, so I have worked mostly in drama myself. So with a number of emerging and new filmmakers, sometimes first-time applicants, sometimes old hands. I think that when it comes to fresh shorts, honestly, just referring to the application pointers and the portal hovering over the question marks, it's an incredible blueprint and I often refer back to it myself when I'm doing applications, even further down the track for Catalyst or EDF. It's really an awesome opportunity to just keep practicing at applications and getting out there and putting your name in front of the funders. So yeah,
it's the first step sometimes and it's a first engagement sometimes with the commission. And so my role is as Talent Pathways Manager. I work with short filmmakers, both in Fresh and in the Hikoahi Catalyst, which is the 100,000 short film. And we lovingly call this the Have a Go Fund because it's open to people who sometimes are moving from, say, documentary into narrative drama or comedy. It's open to people who have never made a film before. It's and so there's lots of questions to be asked as well, and you're at the beginning of the journey, and there's no expectation that you should be getting it right. I think when we come through a school system, we're trained in the right answer or kind of getting a mark, and I think you kind of have to let that go as you come into a creative practice because it's very much about a progression and a journey. It's iterative, and we're here to help you in that journey. So sometimes what you learn by it not going the way that you'd hoped is actually part of that. It's a really important part of the journey. My background, I have a long kind of history of factual television and documentaries in production, and then I went into post-production and drama, and I spent many years in developing all sorts of projects. I've been at the Commission for a number of years now, right across these short films. I've read hundreds of scripts and helped many, many people to further develop their work. So that's my passion, is to support you. And I too am available to you if you have a question. I know I've spoken to a few teams already. I'm excited to see who's going to apply. And so we'll just get stuck into the questions, I think. We've got a few. Shall we?
Yeah.
That's the first question.
First question. Can New Zealand filmmakers living overseas who are making short films that aren't centred around New Zealand be eligible for funding? Okay.
Yeah, and so an important thing about that is the New Zealand content information sheet. So we talked about, prior to this, we thought of a couple of examples of films that have been funded by the Commission that haven't necessarily been shot in New Zealand. Leleu, which was shot in Samoa, the crew went over there. They worked with both local, and they took a couple of cast members over there, and then they came back to New Zealand and edited. And that is Pacific content that is specific to living in, in the Pacific. So that's really important content. But they didn't shoot in New Zealand. What was important was that they had New Zealand crew, and in what we call the creative triangle, which was writer, director, and producer. The editor was, based in New Zealand, and so yeah, and they did their post here. We had another film that wasn't a short film, but it kind of speaks to this example, and that was oh gosh, I've forgotten the title. However, they had New Zealanders who were living in London, and they actually got an expat New Zealand crew together. So they had just about an entire New Zealand crew. Those key elements, writer, producer, director, who were 3 separate roles, were all New Zealanders. And they did do the post back in New Zealand. So that sort of qualified it as New Zealand content. So hopefully that answers that question. Is there anything else you think I've missed anything?
No, I think it's, as you say, it's sort of case by case as well, and specific to the team and their project. So definitely reach out for a chat, drop me an email, and we can, Yeah,
we'll look at it, and as Emma says, take it on case by case. There's the next question, which is how complete does your team need to be at this stage of the application, and is that a determining factor when selecting teams who advance to the next stage? And we've sort of hopefully this is the kind of accurate interpretation in terms of complete, but we talked about together, what's important is your writer and your director remain the same. But sometimes the area that people have some challenges around is getting producers on board. And so what you might find is that you've got one or other. You might have like a producer who's often production managing or hasn't produced before, and you apply and you get through into the shortlisting and you feel like you need some more experienced production support, or you have an experienced person who's your EP, and you bring them on board. We're really happy for you to have co-producers. So you might apply with one producer, and then in your next round you go and you might get an EP, or you might get a co-producer, and we need more producers. So we're really happy for that to happen. That's usually the variation. If I got the gist of that.
And cool to identify that in your producer summary or your video, that you see that there are areas that you may need support from more experienced practitioners. But if you did intend the question for the wider team, say HODs, DOPs, costume designer, etc., great if you've reached out to the heads of department already. But if you haven't, just allude to the likes of DOPs, etc., that you would like to work with, whose work resonates with you, and you were thinking of approaching. That's totally fine. Plans and intentions at this stage in the process.
Yeah, and what's the key element of this is your team video, who you are, your engagement together, and your script. And then, you know, again, we're trying to provide resource and support as you journey forward into that shortlisting stage. So then we've got, I'd love to hear a bit more about what you're looking for in a documentary application, and if you have any examples of statements and scriptments. And so we went and talked to our friends who they run the Loading Docs initiative, and we got some good links to different scriptments and treatments, and I think both Emma and I agreed that, and Jackie, we all chimed in on this one. So it was really about, and Jackie found some really good ones online too. It was really about, it's very similar to approaching it as a narrative story or a comedic story, depending on the tone of your documentary, but it's a character piece, it's a journey. I think it might be a little bit more challenging if it's an issues-based documentary, and that's something that you could talk to Emma about and have a conversation about that. But we did get some good examples of some guides, and all of them sort of reiterated that sense of journey. It's a good read. It sort of sets up the, you know, where you are and who you're journeying with, and that's the same. It's very similar to writing a synopsis. Have you got anything you want to add, Emma?
Yeah, I think you've sort of covered it. It's a cinematic documentary centered around a character. Think in terms of following the subject and posing a central question around their journey, and and I think we've got some great materials now that we'd be happy to share with you around devising a treatment. So just definitely, again, reach out to me and I can send those through to you and have a further chat about it.
I would say in terms of documentaries, you know, one of the things that often people sort of are a bit reticent or find a bit strange is to try and kind of sketch out the story in terms of the arc of the story prior to shooting. And one of the things that Emma mentioned there is about following. Now, I would actually encourage you not to follow. I'd encourage you to try and imagine, with what you know about your lead person, your subject person, is like really thinking of your observations of that person, and that central question is really important too, because you're going to take us on a journey, and whatever that journey is, it's going to have a beginning, middle, end, and it's still we're engaging with that. I know they're a real person, but ultimately that character, and that is what is important in terms of probably a short film documentary that's made for a big screen. And you're taking us on that journey, and you could estimate what you think the most engaging telling of that story might be, and write that in prose, and that it's active and it's a good read. And that's kind of like the gist of writing a good treatment, is that you're telling us the story and you're taking us on that journey as if it was happening.
And yes, yeah. And just one more, even though you can't predict the outcome, you can be hopeful with the facts that you have. So a hopeful ending in terms of your treatment and the way you've worked through it is a good outcome.
Yeah, we've got a question here. Will the Fresh Shorts Fund go due to new government maybe changing the policy? Who can tell? Hope not. I certainly know that the CEO doesn't have any plans about that. And I think that, there's really strong community engagement with short films, and they're a really, really important part of developing voices and creating that progression for filmmakers. So I don't imagine them going, but they may be supported in different ways. Watch the space. I know as much as you do, basically. And I'm in powerful denial about what's happened recently, recent events.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, Oh, we've got okay. From
We have a
Kate.
few there. Should we just work through them?
Yeah, the video application. Nice segue, Kate. Thanks very much, because that's the next part that we're into. We're going to speak to the directors, and we've had a question about the directors and director statements. We will be getting to that. And we're going to talk about genres next. So I think we're going to cover some of this.
Yes.
Quality of script, we're going to talk to that too. Oh, can we access previous applications or okay. That one's a challenging one because of the Privacy Act. But I think if sorry, that's can you access? Oh, it's gone. Where did it go? Crikey.
Well, it may have gone into answered. Can you access previous applications?
Yeah. So that's one where you might want to talk to Emma and see if she's got any contacts that may share their applications. I think the important thing, I know that it's really important to see what does a good application look like, but actually in the end, it's really about your script that you're putting forward and about who you are, not what someone else does. And again, kind of going back to it's not about getting a good mark. It's about exploring a story from your perspective. So should we go bowl into the video and talk a little bit about that, and hopefully we'll go back and just check that we've answered some of those.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk from your perspective, Emma, about what's important on the video?
Yes. So as Jude mentioned, webinars and videos and such like are also challenging for me. So, and I have been, again, I'll say, on your side and submitted fresh shorts with a video before. So I know exactly kind of what you're wrestling with, but a hot tip from me would be yourself. So I have been where you are, and what I can say is just relax into it as much as you can. You don't need to read from a script. Off the cuff is better, and this is a way for the readers to get to know the humans behind the project. So the most important thing is communicating the heart of the story, why you want to tell it, and your connection to each other. And I think it's also important to note that this is something that the assessors kind of refer to again and may bring up in the room. So it's really great to be as authentic and honest as you can, really.
And it's also a great place for, we had some feedback about, there doesn't appear to be a summary for the writer, but it's a place where you can express what the writer's connection to it. I mean, oftentimes it's a writer-director. So, but that's a place where the team can be there, talking about their connection to the story, talking about how they see the story. And I think it's just really important, and this is why we created the video aspect, is that humans make the stories. They're not just pieces of paper. So we never want anybody to forget that there are humans that are making the story. We're not AIs. So authentic, simple, doesn't have to be edited, doesn't have to be all jazz hands. We've had some elaborate ones, but they don't have to be elaborate. Just be yourself.
4 minutes. 4 minutes.
Yeah. That's much appreciated if you can keep to time.
Yeah.
So moving on to genre. And I think we're going to share the screen for the portal, so you can have a look if you haven't accessed the application. So just a loving reminder that if you haven't yet registered on the portal, you need to register in order to access the application, and please do that really early. And another humble and loving reminder, please do not leave your uploads of things to the last minute, because sometimes there's a lot of people trying to upload, and also most people underestimate how much time it actually takes. Like sometimes people will work offline for certain things and then they'll put their answers in later. You can draft, you can have different team members working on it. So please set yourself false deadlines and early deadlines. So genre. Emma, what's your thinking around genre and how many we should be, having a look at?
Okay, so when you think about your script, have a think about other films that may be comparables to that when you're considering genre. It's always good to look at films that you're calling upon for your director's summary, for example, and examine what genres they are categorized as and think, okay, is my film a fit for that? You may find that one leads and one follows. So it might be heavy on drama with a touch of comedy, or around the other way. Always lead with the prevalent genre. Yes, great. And hover over those question marks, because they inform the blueprint as well of the application, and they have some really awesome tips and tricks in there. And I think, yeah, it's always great to just check yourself with other films that are out there and make sure that they're aligned with what you think you're working towards. You might be a drama with a touch of suspense and thriller that doesn't, and that element doesn't quite lend itself to being categorized as genre. So reference it in your director summary or your video, just so the readers know that they can expect it, but they're not expecting all the tropes of that genre within your script. It's just an element rather than something with weight.
And this is part of your creative practice too. You know, you really need to get a clarity about what the genre is that you're wanting to work in, because that actually really informs your story, but it informs the readers as well. It sets up an expectation. And I just want to talk to documentary in that sense as well. You know, if you have a mockumentary, you know, you'd click that you're making a doco, it should be there. And so there is a genre, should be. Otherwise put other and doco, and then if it's a mockumentary, I'd put other and mockumentary, or whatever it might be, like utilize your others basically. Yeah, just think about, again, I think Emma talked about the comparables, but go and find touch points for yourself on the films that you love and look up how they're listed. Can be a really helpful way of doing that. But also, again, on the interwebs, there's some really, really good kind of, what do you call them? Guides. That's what they are, to genre, and it's kind of going to be your stock and trade. So yeah, that would be important. I just want to jump to a question. I just want to pop back to a question about in the video, what if only the director and writer are presenting? So just a loving reminder that you've got a requirement to have a producer. So if they couldn't be present, I mean, you can pre-record something from them, you know. So I think that it's really important to have their presence there, because otherwise I think it would have us like being a little bit apprehensive, like, is this team, like, do they have a producer? We really want teams to journey forward together. It's very difficult to make longer form work, and that's our hope, is that you form teams and you move together through these projects and then through into longer form work together. And no one can do it on their own. So that's why we want to see producers, writers and directors. Yeah, cool.
And if you can't be in the same place at the same time, yes, pre-record, or even a Zoom like Jude and I are right now. Understand that you're not always in the same city as the rest of your core team, so also fine to record a conversation in this way. That's all good.
Cool. Okay, and where are we? We've got to Logline, which is a little bit similar. We've got again in the application, there's the little question mark that helps you with a how-to. That's also in the pointers document, and that's a really useful, those two examples are really great. And I think, Emma, you were talking about just doing it as like a paint by numbers, yeah?
Yeah,
even if it feels, yeah, sorry.
No, you're cool. No, a really cool exercise to do with your team is take those formulas, and there are other great ones online, and go away, writer, director, producer as a team, and come together with some offerings. So to get closer to what you're trying to say, I think it can be really awesome to all have a think about it in your own spaces. Sometimes the magic happens when you bring those back into the room together, because they're really hard and they take time. So that would be another thing. Make sure that you leave enough time for them. The genre and the log line are what the readers go into the script read with. So they're small but powerful, and they tell them what your film is about really succinctly, and they stay with them while they're making their way through the script, and they kind of hope that it delivers on the promise of the log line. So definitely give yourselves enough time to get as close as you can. Obviously, it will be ever evolving and the script will change and you'll go back and change the log line. But yeah, I think just make sure that you don't leave this one to the last minute.
Oh, we're losing some questions here. They're getting kicked off when we haven't answered them. So I'm just aware of that.
Jackie's answering them. Jackie's answering.
Oh, bless. Oh, thank God. Okay, excellent. Go, Jackie. So I also really want to encourage people to utilize the log line as a diagnostic tool for your story, because I think often what happens is, and you should write an emotional script, and then you edit the script with there's a famous Hemingway quote, which is write drunk, edit sober. And so you you're doing that with you might do your long form. Sometimes people start with a log line though as an idea, and they work to synopsis and so on and so forth. But often it's a retrospective sort of refit. But still, it's a really important tool in terms of like thinking, is my story, if I don't have a central question or a dramatic conflict, if that's not in my log line, it may not be reflected in my script. Is this something I've got a problem with? And vice versa. Like when you've gone through your script, is making sure that they, as Emma talked about, they mirror each other. And that's the same with your synopsis. Like sometimes we find more information in the synopsis that's not in the script, and it kind of answers a few questions. Sometimes it's the opposite. So as you're going through, processes, whether it's this application or any other, having like comparing and contrasting those short pieces with your script can be really valuable in terms of diagnosing what you need to further develop as well. And somebody talked about the balance of 300 words, and this is where refining something like it is really challenging. I get it, but there's some beauty in brevity and clarity, and I'm learning that myself. And so that's where giving yourself time and actually editing it and just getting to your key things. You don't have to tell us everything. You have to decide what are the key things that you need to tell us. And that kind of leads us into our little script top 5. Good segue there, if I do say so myself. Right. So we've kind of looked at some of the things that often appear to us as areas that could be further developed for lots of people, and that we think are really important as makers and readers. So Emma, do you want to talk about, so the first thing for us is the dramatic question, what the story is about, why we should care, and that often relates to themes. So for you, Emma, when you're working with your team and you're creating an application, what does that mean to you, and how have you further developed that in some of your stories?
Yeah, so I know sometimes it can take a few iterations to identify what the central question is that's driving the narrative. But for me, working with directors and writers, once they've identified what that is, it really, everything sort of falls into place. So the central question that's driving that narrative forward is present in every scene, and every beat needs to turn on that question, moving it forwards until the ending where we can finally land and answer it. And so, as I said, you might not find that in the first iteration of the script, but once you get there, you will find that it's deeply connected with theme, and it presents the protagonist's central conflict and its driver. And I think an example of that for me would be Mary Mary, the Sunday Stories I did last year with writer-director Ella Gilbert. It was a story of her grandmother who fell pregnant at the age of 18 out of wedlock, and kind of examined the pressures of society at that time pressing down upon her, and ultimately decision to obviously have that child, because that decision was more or less taken away from her. But the question that drove the story was, how can Mary find her freedom? So find a place to settle and accept her new future. So I think that, yeah, that's how I work with writers and directors, and I feel like it's really essential to finding the way with the story and the character journey. It's all deeply connected.
And sometimes people just they work at that question, and or it might be just one word. Sometimes for some writers it's just one word, and they just put it on a post-it or a card and they stick it to the wall when they're thinking about what is that journey that they're taking that character on. And it's often a problem that needs to be solved. We've just got a couple in between our next one, which is dramatic conflict. What length for short film is feasible, desirable, given the budget and first-time nature of the short? How long is too long? And look, this is a challenging question. I think, again, going back to, you write the story that you want to tell, and then you go back and you're always, you're editing, basically. And so there are some useful rules of thumbs, but they're not laws, okay? They're just guidelines. And that is, in a festival, if your film's over 15 minutes, and it's a historic thing that happened, why 15 minutes is the mark, but they have to program, they have to knock another film out if your film's over 15 minutes in the program, because remember that short films are never watched on their own, they're watched in a curated program. So many programmers will say to filmmakers, write the film that you want to tell, and I would tend to agree with that, particularly at script stage. You've got a story you want to tell. That's the most important thing at this point. You can edit as you go. So hopefully that answers that question. It also depends on which festival you believe you want to go to. Some festivals are really open to much longer stories, and some have quite hard and fast deadline, duration. So I would suggest, if there's a particular festival you want to go to, check out their FAQs about duration. There's another one about COVID conditions. It is still applicable, because of COVID, if your key cast gets COVID, it can stop your shoot. And we're still having problems with that. And that's why we increased the budget. And you'll see that there's again, it's a guideline that up to when you see your stage twos, there's a request about thinking about health and safety and making sure that can be covered. That's why we increased the budget, because it's still in the community. It's not to the extent, but it can still,
directors have been known in recent times to have COVID during a shoot. So just having your plans and contingencies around that. Yeah.
Oh, that it were different, but sadly not. Okay, so dramatic conflict. Now this is one that Ken Duncombe at the International Institute of Modern Letters, I've learned to say that quickly, and I can do that late at night after a few. So he runs a special conflict workshop for his students, because for some reason, I think we're just maybe it's being part of a small or mini island nation. We are on the whole kind to one another, but sadly we carry that to our characters, and really dramatic conflict is about putting your character in the most difficult situation, whether it's a comedy, whether it's a drama or a documentary. And so Emma, as a producer, when you're working with people and they are what I call sometimes protecting their characters, how do you work with them on that? How do you develop that dramatic conflict in your story?
Yeah, so like you say, the basics of story, we have a character who wants something and an obstacle has to get in the way of them achieving their goal in order to get what they need. So it is something that feels insurmountable for the character in your story. So it has to be something really specific to that character and their situation. It doesn't need to be raging. It can be something that's really small and internal and felt. For example, Stella, a short film I produced that was at Show Me Shorts last week, was about an elderly couple, and the wife has to say goodbye to her husband and drop him at hospice, and we see the emotions that she is grappling with on screen to eventually do that and finally land in her home alone. And so I think that you have to, and actually it's interesting because often what you find you're missing in a character journey is that dramatic conflict, and finding ways to introduce and express that through the narrative and the character story.
Have we got that little illustration, Connie? Have we got that that's set up at the moment? Yes. Our friend, so it is a stick figure drawing, but this is the kind of essence of it though. The little dotted path underneath this person is their journey. Their want and desire is the star, and they're moving towards that, and they've got a massive obstacle that they have to overcome. That is it in a nutshell. And I know it might seem basic. It's not intended to be I don't know, I can't think of the word, but it's sometimes it comes down to the simplicity of that. How you express that is the complexity. But actually, in essence, it's as simple as that. Yeah. Cool. Shall we move on to the other bits and pieces? So that kind of leads to character journey, doesn't it, as well? And those two things, dramatic conflict and character journey, sort of, when you're reading, they go hand in hand. And you really, what everybody's, I hope, attempting to do is to give a reader and an audience, remembering that it's for someone, it comes from you, it's your imagining and your expression of this telling, but you're taking the audience and the reader on the kind of the most the deepest emotional journey you can in the most satisfying way. And that's why those things are so important. And when you do it, it's really amazing. Cool. We've got a little notification. We're moving right along. Okay. So we'll go to anything else you want to say, Emma, about character journey.
Well, I think just quickly, with a short film, just remember that you don't have the luxury of swirling around in the opening. You have to get to the heart of the story fast and drop us into the first scene, knowing whose story it is, what world we're in, and setting up the reader for the journey ahead. So identifying what the character wants, that just grab that audience and that reader really quickly so that you can hold on to them, especially for eventual cut through on the festival circuit. I think that's important. Yeah.
And there was a question here about, is there room for story applications that don't follow a basic stereotypical structure? Absolutely there are. I think what is important though, and that's part of our guidelines, is that it's narrative. And so we've had some very loose variations of that over the years, but you still have to have an emotionally satisfying journey. However you take somebody on that journey is up to you. What I would say is that in my experience of over the years, it's really underestimated the power of the simplicity of that structure. And if you think about a short film, it's a form, and how you express yourself in that form is really up to you. That's where the originality comes from. But it's quite a challenge to even, it takes quite a long time to get to master that form. So that's all I'd say in that respect. But yeah, if that's what you want to explore, great, as long as it's in the narrative space. Emma, you want to add anything?
Yes, just quickly, the narrative checklist that is in the application pointers is a really awesome Bible for when you're working through your script and making sure that you're hitting those questions and those targets. It's something that I refer to with every script that I'm developing. And yeah, so don't lose sight of those application guidelines and pointers documents, because there's some real gold in there.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump to just a strong ending, and remembering that that's what you leave We've also, important as visual storytelling, but I'm aware that we are moving through time at a rapid pace. Somehow it's sped up. So let's just ensure that you've got a really strong ending, and that is something that it's what you're leaving the audience with. It's the thematics of the story, and there's a kind of a cognitive psychology rule of thumb as well, that people only remember the high point and the ending, and remembering too that films get watched and read back, well, certainly watched by a programmer back to back. So a really powerful ending, and that can be really hard to nail. I don't know if you've experienced that, Emma, the challenges of
yeah, absolutely. I mean, knowing what you want the audience, identifying what you want the audience to feel about that character at the end of the film, that can take, and resolving that central question that you finally identified can take many iterations. I think that, again, with Mary, Ella wanted to land in a place that was more celebratory of her grandmother's journey, actually, and finding a way to be respectful about that. And so we finally settle with Mary and her acceptance of her new situation, and it's a really tender and still and beautiful moment that honors her grandmother's journey and her legacy. So I think that when you finally get to that place, when you've got the central driving question, and you can finally find an answer for that, and land the audience with what you want to say about that journey, that's really the gold. Yeah, but it takes some time.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going on to director's summary. We've had a question. Our story is personal collaboration between myself as writer and the director. Can we write the director's summary together? I'd actually encourage you to do the video together. And that may be frustrating to you as a writer, but what we're interested in that director summary is the kind of performance and visualization of the story. And in the shortlisting area, there's more opportunity for the writer. I mean, basically the writer's actually got the lion's share of this application, because it's the script is the key element to this particular application. It's your team and your script with some short summaries. So those are the two, team and the script are those essentials. So I think that's where the writer's getting that opportunity to show their kind of creativity, and then we'd encourage you to utilize the video as that place, and but for the director to talk to a little bit more about how you intend to visualize the story, who you might work with, and also and you've got your 5 images as well, but that would be probably a guide that we'd encourage, but it's really up to you. So the director's summary, very much a snapshot pitch, and we've had the reflection back to us that 300 words, not very much. So what we've talked about too is about not everything, the key things. And so there's 2 things that are really important in a short film: performance and aesthetic, in terms of the director and who you're going to work with. And again, that's intentions. Anything you want to add to that, Emma, in terms of that summary, because it is short?
Yeah, I think just if you're connecting back to the story, just what is the film, why you want to tell it, make that a really quick sentence, and then launch into telling us about your voice as a filmmaker, so that we can get a real sense of your visual style and aesthetic. It's nice to reference comparables again at this stage, bring them in, and filmmakers whose sensibilities resonate with you, to exemplify lighting, character, framing, production design.
I think. Yeah, but in a set, like you kind of got to pick three or 4 sentences. I think we might be melding our longer version into that maybe, but it's giving a sense. Just give us a sense of things.
Yeah, really quickly, just like like a reference can say a lot.
It can. Yeah, a couple of references can help. go a long way. We go, oh, okay, great. So, okay, we see that. So then the 5 images, which are really important. We've got a little, this is a mock-up actually that Vero, who's a previous script to screen person, just put together as trying to demo, the idea that what's important about this is that we were wanting to demonstrate it's not all the same imagery, and it's taking the audience on a sensory journey so that there's a kind of a sense of vision. We get the tone, there's a cohesion to the tone of the imagery. Anything you want to add? I know, Emma, you were really surprised about the 5 images, weren't you, when we first did this? You were skeptical.
What 5? Yes, 5 images, but it's incredible how often when you're sitting in the room going back through, and the visual references are just so important. I didn't realize the weight on the visual references and how much they can convey, even though it's just 5 images, a sense of the director's vision and inform the script as well, and bring that to life a little bit, and inform the visual identity of the director. It's really, but so choosing those images really carefully and thinking about, I just want to hark back to a painting or a photograph. When you stand in front of, when you get, say, master photographers, that image just can speak volumes, and you've got the opportunity. It's a small montage, really, giving us a sense. And again, it doesn't have to be literal beginning, middle, end of your film, but you want to take us on an emotional journey with that. You want some cohesion between the colour and there's a sense that you're giving us. It's also in the pointers document. So we've got a couple of other questions here. Are there any resources you would recommend for first-time producers? Alternatively, there are some good places to network and reach out to connect with producers, especially for those of us who don't live in major cities. Certainly reaching out to Emma Sparta, which is the Screen Producers Guild, and Emma can also connect you with them. Women in Film and Television joined with Sparta to run an emerging producer course. It's Script to Screen if they're running events, and usually there's producers there as well. Just trying to think of other. I have some good resources and then just ready to go in an email. So I will reach out to me and fire me an email, and we can even have a chat about it. Happy to help connect you there.
There's a story. There's a question about, I've got a character with autism. I don't have autism. I plan on directing this film. Is that okay, or should I prioritise finding a director from the autistic community? I would partner with, I would really encourage you, and that kind of comes to the diversity and inclusion, tangata whenua, representation and diversity, and that's authentic engagement with the community. If you're not from that community, it's really spending time. Now, you may not have, it's also indicating your intentions of how you will do that as well. I would encourage you to put that, either if that's you as a director, put that in your director's piece, and or in your producer's summary as well. But have a look at that piece in both the guidelines and in the pointers document. So we're just going to move to the producer's statement. And one of the things about that is cohesion. So, is that it reflects what your writer and your director have kind of said, this is what we're going to do. And then we don't, we start getting a bit worried if you've said something completely opposite to that. But so thinking about, it's kind of like how you're going to bring this together, the feasibility of it. You may have some thoughts on who your team is. Emma, do you want to speak to that a little bit about what what we look for in that statement?
Yeah, as you said, Jude, it's how are you going to realise this particular director's vision? And and then moving on to what your plan is for the challenges. So answer the questions in the reader's minds. Honestly, if you're looking at the script going, oh my God, there are animals, children, stunts, night shoots, we're away, like, identify those challenges. And I know 300 words, again, not a lot, but just that it's important for the readers to know that you know that those challenges are there and you acknowledge them, and who you might lean on to help you achieve this vision, or where you think you might need to make some, think about your plans and contingencies around this. Yeah, I think that's really what the producer's statement is: plans, contingencies, and intentions to realize the vision within the budget, or if not within the budget, then will you call on additional financing or support in that area as well.
Yeah. Most of it, and we're not asking for a budget at this stage, so it's really about the who, the how, the what. Like it's talking about the elephant in the room, if indeed you do have an elephant in the room, metaphorically or otherwise. But it's telling us that you acknowledge that you've got those things there. That they're going to create parameters for your shoot, particularly if you've got children, or you've got animals, or you've got stunts, or you've got VFX, or you've got these things. It's like just acknowledging that they exist and that you're going to be seeking support. You may not have contacted them yet, but telling us where you might look for that support. And you may, if shortlisted, you might bring an EP on, or a specialist in that area. You don't have to have engaged with them at that stage. One of the key things too we want to understand is, and all it is a sentence, is that is how you're going to support your director to get that performance. Because remembering those two key things, performance, number one, and aesthetic. So it's and you're the person who's also bringing the team together. We know, again, remembering that you're beginning at the beginning, so we don't have an expectation that you'll have it all sorted out. It's just identification, really. The summary is really about identification. Would you agree with that, Emma?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. How are we going for time, people?
We got 7 minutes.
Oh, okay. So we've got, we had one question about submitting multiple projects, and which we've had, over the years, we've had inquiring about that. And one of the challenges is that you kind of knock yourself out a little bit, and particularly if they're coming from the same people. We did have one year where there was a writer-director on one, and then they were the producer on another, and they both got shortlisted. And I think that was, I can't remember if that was a residential one. Maybe it was challenging. So very different projects. I think that's the key, actually, really, is if you're a producer and you've got 2 projects in, awesome, because they're probably going to be different. If you're a writer-director and you've got 2 projects in, you potentially are actually, it's your voice that's going to come through, and that's where they might knock themselves out. And so I'd encourage you to think about what's the one that's dearest to your heart, that you really want to work on, or that your script's most developed for, actually, because that's a really key element of this application. So think about it from that perspective and put all your energy into that story. And we just had a question about where will this recording be available? It'll be available on the Script to Screen website. And there's one there from 2022, and I don't know if this replaces, but they're both kind of saying similar things. Yeah. Any other questions?
I think Jackie's been feverishly.
Is there anything that should we just go back to maybe, is there anything that we feel like we want to go? We've got, 2 minutes?
1 minute, you can answer that.
Okay, cool. Maybe we just have a quick scroll through the questions that Jackie's answered.
Oh, great. Okay. Oh, here we go. Coming up. Have we had a project from shortlisted from both Someday Stories and Fresh Shorts? No, we've actually had one with Aho Shorts, actually. Last year we had one, and they made a decision to go with Aho Shorts, and they got funded, and that was really awesome. They'd been shortlisted the previous year. So that's, that was really cool. Hopefully that answers your question. Budget is just a little bit of budget. Budget is 30,000, and my experience of every short filmmaker I've ever met is their ambition outstrips the budget every time, and that's kind of just how it is. Doesn't matter. So we just want, again, it's a plan. What's your plan? Have you got the ability to crowdfund? Sometimes people have crowdfunded the year before. You need about a year fallow time between your crowd, you're going out to the crowd or not. You might be looking for, it depends what the subject matter of your film is. Sometimes people can get amazing community support, as in some funding grants from different community organisations, iwi grants, all sorts of things where there's a support for that story to be told, because it either hasn't been told or it speaks to a specific audience that people are trying to reach. So yeah, anything else, Emma? Because there's been some incredible ways of getting support.
Yes, I mean, personally, I've run boosted campaigns, both for fresh shorts, but also self-funded films, and there's a real community there of artists supporting artists that's amazing. So don't be afraid of it, is all I could say. If you put in the work, there's a very high chance that you will succeed. Yeah.
The film page, or the film part of Boosted, is actually the most successful part. It's actually grown, and our contribution to encouraging people that have been funded for Fresh to go and crowdfund has really helped them expand that. And then Creative New Zealand have got on board. It's a really I agree with Emma, don't be afraid. It is lots of people do have fear and trepidation, but people support your voice. Yeah. And go out. If you're going to go out, get a sense from boosted people how much you can go for, and it's thinking about also that next concentric circle, but also think about elements of your story that might have what they call hooks, and that's as important in terms of finding some other donations to your film. There's lots of ways you can get things sponsored. I know Candlelit Pictures is really good at getting all sorts of stuff sponsored. So every little bit counts,
Coffee,
and you just, promise I've promised, sometimes it's just a logo. Like, what was that one from Jackie? I missed it. Said something.
Can the producer, director, and writer all be newbies? Is this
yes.
Or should at least
absolutely.
one thing be something? No, all go for it.
And just talk about, you'll be seeking support and more experienced people that, if shortlisted, will be seeking support. And we're there to help you with that kind of stuff if you're shortlisted, because so someone asked, what are some of the qualities of successful candidates? And you're as many types of successful people as there are people, to be clear. If you go back to what are we looking for and the criteria, and it's so every year people think that that's not really what we use, but actually it really is. Can we pop that up there? We got that. I think we asked for that. We got the criteria and the.
I think it's coming.
Okay, coming. Because no one believes us, but this is what, and especially when we're trying to make difficult decisions, we go back to this, because this is what, we've said to you, this is what we're trying to make our decisions on. There was one after that one. Have we got that? No. Okay, so look in your guidelines, people, and in your pointers, and the bullet points of that criteria are what really, that's really what it's about. I think successful candidates, I think when you get the funding, you funded it still is difficult, really. It's a lot of hard. So yeah, I find that's a difficult question for me. I think that having something to say is really important, personally. Something that touches people's hearts or makes them laugh, like literally that stuff that's in there. Are you taking us on a journey? I live for being taken on a journey when I'm reading your stories. That's my heart's desire, is that you, and I sit there reading, and I think my neighbours think I'm absolutely mental, and I'm laughing, I'm crying, I'm screaming, I'm doing all sorts of stuff. I get angry, I get upset. That's wonderful. Take us on that journey. So that's really the quality. So yeah, it's have you got something to say? Is it going to be impactful? That's the only, you don't need to scroll down. It's just those two.
Yeah.
Is that distinction and is that perspective that only you can hold? I think there's this funny thing that you think that there's some mystical quality, but it's really about being yourself. There's no one else like you. No one else has had your life experience. No one has the take on this story. So that's really what you need to be honing into.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, Jude, we have hit 6:01.
Oh, lovely. I just want to answer this. Is the whole thing about the pilot for a TV series. It needs to be, as long as this project that you're putting forward is a standalone great story in its own right. A pilot often is setting up the world and multiplicity of characters. Shorts tend to be much more singular. And so I would encourage you to talk to Emma about that as a person who's made a pilot and a lot of short films, and try and find that distinction if you were to try and utilise that. I think it's really smart to try and utilise it, but she'd be a really good person to talk to about that.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, thank you so much, everybody, for your full-on participation. That was really cool. Remember, Emma's there. Her contact details hopefully will flash up on the screen. Mine is jude@nzfilm.co.nz. It shouldn't be a secret. And I'm happy to talk to people, but Emma is actually there for you specifically.
Yeah, that's my job, people. So reach out. Don't be afraid. Give me a buzz if there were any questions that you had burning on your mind, but you didn't get a chance to ask them. Just, drop me a line.
Yeah.
I'm around.
And I can tell you full on into it, because that was some awesome questions.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much again. And have a great evening.
Ka kite.
Ka kite.